going to streamline things because this is moving at incredible pace on the clock. So I'm going to freestyle a little bit here, guys. So bear with me as we go through it. One of the other things which I think has come up a lot, and Thomas, I'm going to come to you on this, is is a word that's come up more than ever before, I think, over the last 18 months or so, which is about about friction reduction. The amount of ease of how tech companies are looking to make things easier, less stressful, to remove inefficiencies, to create efficiencies in process. That's very much at the heart of what you've been doing with FINBOURNE, right?
And it's sort of in everything we do, right? I know Leah mentioned it earlier, right? Where you have to look at the world and bring new solutions to it. We tend to look at it and go, right, the customer needs to do A, B, C, D. If you reimagine the process this way, they all just drop out at the bottom of it as a result of giving them something they didn't even know they needed. And I think it was Philip who said it, where, you have to prove value at every stage, right? There's a lot of companies now who talk about, we're on the cloud, we're API, we're all of these good things, but for us, those are just the things that bring efficiency now, right? Open APIs are efficient. Why? Because, well, we don't have to build software development kits. Swagger and SwaggerGem will do it for us, right? It takes away some of our focus from stuff that used to take years to do to now taking, weeks to do instead, right? And everywhere you look, we use standards where it makes us efficient. We use a new way of looking at the problem set where it makes it efficient for us and the client. And at every point, we try to deliver value through that. So we have you can sign up to our platform for free. It's not the old model of, get a PowerPoint, talk to us, like just go check it out. Everything that we say we do is API first, not because we think that's just revolutionary, right? And it's the Steve Jobs way of doing this, or Henry Ford, or whatever it is. It's because actually what it does is it breaks down one of the barriers to say, can I open the bonnet and look under the hood? You don't have to. We've given you the schematics for it, and the world has changed in that, the IP isn't valuable anymore. The team you've built to actually make it happen is the thing that's valuable now.
Yeah, absolutely. That sort of ability that you see from all too good tech companies who are looking at streamlining processes, I think isn't just restricted to the financial technology space, but it's an absolute feature, I think, of the last 5-10 years, but it's probably been thrown into more of a spotlight over the last 18 months than ever before, and I've loved seeing that, and actually what all of you guys have been doing is really focusing on that as a core theme as well. All of you all of the people in this on this panel have seen their companies grow at a tremendous rate over the course of the last year, and in certain cases that's been about taking investment. In other cases, that's just been about sheer expansion. Philip, we've spoken about this on the show before. I know there's been a phenomenal trebling of headcount, if I'm not mistaken, over the course of the last
450%, I think. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, and growing. And that's that's been a business that's completely changed shape. And I know at certain stages there are people there you haven't met. That investing in growth is something that takes courage, particularly during that sort of phase, but also a bit of skill in communications. Talk to me about the importance of investing in growth when people are in that sort of defense mode at various stages, and what prompted you to have the courage to go on the offense.
Well, there's a lot to be said for seizing the market opportunity. Of course, the particular niche that we sit in has a couple of incumbent players who have defined the industry, and for better or for worse, they need disrupting now. And to sort of extend Thomas's point a bit, I mean, you can't just do disruption for disruption's sake. You have to have something tangible at the end that actually improves the efficiency of your customers. So for us, it was about trying to bottle what we were doing and acknowledging that we needed to sort of weaponize it in some ways that was beyond the capability that we had at the time. We had grown very happily on our sales book. There came a point when we were looking at it and thinking we could probably continue growing on that and then we'll get swallowed at some point. But we actually think that we've got something which should redefine our industry. And the only way we're going to do that is by being masters of our own fate. And the only way we're going to be masters of our own fate, for better or for worse, was to allow ourselves to take some investment because it was on our terms. Right? We were in a strong position to solicit really high quality investment. And we've talked about this, Toby. It was the most surreal process. I mean, imagine, and I guess this has happened over the last year. You're going to buy a new house, but the only way you can do that is go to that new house is over Zoom. You can't get a feeling for the place. You can't see the place. You can't really see the garden properly. You can't see cracks in the wall or anything like that. You have to go in there, and you're going to get one impression before you get to go again over maybe a slightly better Zoom call. So that was sort of a taking investment over VC, VC over VC, I guess. And
there's a
that
catchphrase.
For us was a leap of faith. We had to assess people. Now I like to think of myself as a good judge of character, but that's always been in person. It's two-dimensional judging of character is difficult. And to have courage and our convictions to take that forward and to take the investment. The decision was, do we want to lead the market like we think we can? Can we do that from a small, relatively weak position where we've got the same voice? So for a while, everyone had the same voice in the world, right? We didn't know how to market ourselves as a whole collective world for a little while. So the web was a really leveling factor. We got a lot of incoming stuff, and we realized that had to persist. That we had to be able to extend beyond our means. And that meant taking the investment. The courage of our convictions was that we would take the investment and it would pay dividends for us. And I think talking about the team element, goodness me, growing a team over Zoom, I still shudder at the thought. I tried very hard, to see every new member of staff at least once in person, even if it was just to lob a computer across a hedge, while being 2 meters distance. Just to let people know that they were working for a real company, and that sort of feeds back, I think, and it gives people an impression on how they should deal with your customer and how you should be thinking about people and everything like that. But really, the courage of our convictions and growing the right team, investing in growth, it was about us making a statement that we weren't going to just accept that the market was a bit bigger. That it was like we really wanted to go after the market. We recognise that our industry is it's a big investment industry. You start on a journey in data, and that journey goes for years and years and years. You'll be building long-term relationships up, and actually, we had to have the capacity to deal with the incoming work. We had to have the capacity to keep customers satisfied all the way through it to all the previous points, not just seeing the opportunity, but seizing it, making the customer happy with it, innovating through it, coming out the other side with a better product. All of those things have to happen simultaneously. And really the trick is keeping all those balls in the air and spin the plates at the same time, so nothing comes clattering down around you, while getting yourself in a place where you build the right corporate culture when you have very little interaction with people. That's kind of reversing now. Like, we are just sort of getting to meet people. Are we really happy in each other's company yet? Yes, I think at one level we are. But are we anticipating it? Are we getting to that place? That's still a long way off from every company. I think I don't think any of us who've grown like this over the last year are quite at that innate, point. We're bluffing a lot of the way through. Yeah. And to all Remonda's point about, are you the right type of person to work at Solidatus? Will you, do you understand what it really means? I think that's been the trick, getting that message over and trying to get people onto that page as quickly as possible. Or to have them say, actually, it's a bit of a journey, this one. Yeah. But once they're on the journey, they're happy with it because they're going to have to put everything into it.
And that's been the fascinating thing for me. 21 years in the recruitment industry, and seeing how companies have adapted to that and being able to grow their businesses in such a different way has been stunning. I'm gonna burst through the last of the points, and I'm going to ask you for the magic eighth in a very simple sentence, because we've got a couple of questions that are coming in that I want to make sure we get to as well. So Liam, I'm going to address this one to you to finish off the 7 habits, which is about companies who are constantly innovating and challenging the norm. That innovation, I think, has been central to a lot of the things that we've been talking about with the special sauce of Cassini. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen from that.
Yeah, I think it touches on a lot of the points that we've discussed in the round anyway, and it goes back to that point that we were saying, Tom was saying earlier about, you don't want to be in a position as a tech company just sort of delivering solution to each specific kind of requirement that comes in from a client. You have to be looking at a bigger picture and a bigger solution, and that really is the key. You know, we're as a tech firm, we're in a lucky position. I mean, sure, all of us are, right? We're in a position where we see lots of different clients and potential clients, how their processes work, what their challenges are, how they're handling and addressing them. And if we're smart, we're in a position where we can actually take that, synthesize it, figure out what the commonality is, what the sort of best underlying framework or solution set or architecture is going to look like to address all of those requirements and the next set of problems which maybe people haven't figured out yet. So innovating, you know, going back to Cassini, we started off by saying we're going to create this solution which can tell you the total carry cost of a trade before you execute, which was something that no firm could do at the time because it required all this data and information that didn't even exist in a lot of firms. It was outsourced and, you know, whatever. So you innovate in terms of solving a problem that you know is going to become a much more important and significant problem to a customer by, again, looking at, you can see the big market trends, you're talking lots of firms, you can look down the road and see what might happen, what might change, what is going to become important that isn't now, and then figure out what the right answer has to look like. Building that answer is not always easy, but that's what we all enjoy doing, right? I mean, that's the fun part of this job to a large extent, is figuring out cool solutions for problems that no one's solved before.
Yeah.
So that is part of the lifeblood. You know, innovation really is the lifeblood of fintech. I remember when I started my first business back in 2005, we were in the fintech world and in capital markets world, we were really unusual. We were a small startup doing something that hadn't been done before, and there weren't a lot of peers, weren't a lot of firms at that time solving, you know, bespoke, domain expert problems. When Cassini started a few years ago, it was a different story. There's lots of firms like everybody here, and lots of firms with bringing huge amounts of expertise and innovative ability and creative ability to solve problems in a new way, and with all of these tool sets that we've talked about to deliver those to customers in a much more efficient way. So yeah, it's just a constant. It goes back to the listening, goes back to thinking about how you solutionize things and how you scale. And if you don't innovate, you die. You know, to use a cliche that's been overused. Someone else will come along, see what you've done, and go, "That's great. You've invented a sort of new solution. There's a new concept there," and someone will improve on it if you don't innovate and keep moving forward. So it really just is the bread and butter of what we do. It does tie a little bit in. You know, think about the secrets of successful fintech firms. It ties a little bit back into some of the other things we've talked about in terms of the team and the culture as well. And that point about investing for growth. You know, if you're going to innovate, you have to have the capacity to do it. You have to have the right people and the right organization structure and the right team sizes to allow you to keep innovating while still delivering and supporting your customers with the products that you've actually sold them. So it ties back into making sure that you've got the right funding to do that, and that you're planning ahead, because hiring the right people and keeping your team culture intact and keeping the right mindset of smart, collaborative people on board takes time. As Remonda was saying, you know, not everybody's suited to this kind of world. It's not easy. You can't just hire 30 more people overnight without maybe shedding a lot of them along the way, right? So you have to be always thinking ahead. What are the innovations? What are the changes? What's the product set? What's the capacity needed to deliver that?
Yeah, I think that's sort of the industry's been guilty at various stages of over-engineering opportunities and trying to innovate too much for their customers, to give their customers things that they don't actually really need. And coming back to that whole theme of really listening to what customers need, that to me has been an absolute common thread, golden thread between everyone that we're saying. So let's move, before we move into a couple of questions, very, very quickly. I'm going to ask you for that. This has been a time of unprecedented change, which has been overused as phraseology. But if there's one golden bit of advice that's outside those 7 things that you think has been instrumental to the success of your business over the course of the last 18 months, what would that be? Remonda, I'm going to come to you first, if I may.
I would say the main thing is believe in the vision. Believe in it. If it's there and you can see it, it's going to happen.
Love that. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And you can see that absolutely screaming off the page when you were talking about it as well. Tom, over to you.
I'd say it's the biggest change we've seen is you have to have a good sense of the value proposition for everyone, right? You have to have for employees, you have to know when they're joining, what they're going to get out of the trade, and it has to be more than money. and you have to know when it doesn't work for them anymore from their perspective, not from the company's. And for your customers, the same has to be true as well, right? You know, we move away from pricing long-term deals with huge divorce bills into actually, if there's no value there for it, and then please move somewhere else, because we care about the end investor and that they're getting value. So we should be providing value. And if we're not, we should be willing to walk away.
I think there's that bravery and courage is a big part of what everyone's been talking about there. And I think sometimes people sit there about making big decisions about when the right time to offboard clients and people is at the stage for the right time of your journey. And that's something which probably hasn't been talked about as much as it should have been on the show and things we've looked at before. So really good information to pass on as well. Thank you. Liam, over to you.
So I'd say the additional thing, what Remonda said, domain expertise is key. Being a domain expert, being a trusted partner. But the big sort of additional secret, I think, that's been the key to our success, I'd say, is transparency. I love the kind of concept and the mindset that transparency brings, internally. We talked about onboarding new staff and team members during this period. It's very hard, as we've said, to do that while they're remote and to get a sense of the team. But having processes within your organization where you can share information, where you are almost 100% transparent. There's probably 1 or 2% of information that can't be completely shared and open within your organization, but keeping that top down, bottom up, and across teams is key, so that you build the ability for people to work together and help each other when the crunch points come and the stress points come. Being transparent about that, we can help each other sort of get through those periods, and being transparent with clients about what you can and can't do.
Over communication, I think, has been something which has come through both internally and externally a lot through. One
of the most powerful things. Sorry to interrupt, Toby. One of the most powerful things in sales with a client is to say no.
Yeah.
If they ask you about, can you do ABC, and if you genuinely can't, say no. That's just honesty, and that helps build that trust in the long term.
Definitely. Mr. Miller, if you will be the icing on the cake on this eighth secret.
The icing on the cake.
Always the best part.
Well, I think it's the same for any founder. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm sure it's similar. You can't leave anything left in the tank. You have to use everything that you've got. Belief comes from the core. Hard work is a way of expressing belief. In many respects, you have to leave something infectious behind, not only with your own staff but with your clients. You have to be, so if you to a degree, you're going to be an expert in what you're doing, or at least an expert in what someone wants you to do. You're going to have to express that enthusiasm in every possible term, even when it's difficult, even when it feels like the darkest day. One of the questions up, I'm not jumping in it too much because it's sort of the way that I'm approach things. To become successful, you have to be able to last the course. You can't expect something to come to you. You're going to have to go and get it, and that, to a degree, at the beginning is through, and it's always going to be the same, but it's different levels. It's going to be through hard graft. You're doing everything from payroll to legal to everything. And eventually you'll start to get to your product. And when you get to the product, you can't be exhausted. Your product is the most, it's the most interesting thing you do. It's the most engaging thing you do. You have to be all over it with enthusiasm. Doesn't matter how many hours you've done over the preceding month, year, you have to approach it feeling fresh every single day. And that's everything. Yeah. If you can't do that, you're not going to be authentic to people or your staff or your families. I mean, everyone has to be on this journey with you. It becomes an obsession, and it needs to be a good obsession. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the infectious enthusiasm is one of the things that I'm most passionate about, and probably one of the things that I've loved most about all of the interviews, over 200 interviews that I've done over the last year or so, has been I'll come off every single one of the calls and just be excited about the opportunity, but excited about the marketplace, excited about talking to people who are genuinely passionate about what's been coming through. So, 4 excellent pearls of wisdom there to add on to 7 more, which we can do. So we've got a formula here for making massive success for everyone else there afterwards. I'm going to throw in a because it's been too difficult not to rush through all of this stuff, but I'm going to get a couple of questions in here. One's come through from Emma Parry, and it's to you, Remonda. Are you finding it still hard to get firms to understand the client classification suitability functionality of your solutions. Is this still taking more time and effort than it should, given the stringent regulatory requirements?
Yeah, thank you, Emma, for putting this question forward. You're always going to be challenged by the market. One of the biggest challenges I think every single one of us have on this call is if it's a no-brainer for anyone to take the solution if they understand actually their problem and what each one of these solutions on this call is trying to solve and is solving. So absolutely, and for us actually the challenge is ever changing, partly because a lot of people in the financial sector now, in particular in financial institutions, they're worried. I mean, in the legal function, in the compliance function, they're worried about their job, they're worried about their reputation. There's more accountability being thrown for sure in the UK, and definitely the rest of the world is following suit these days. So absolutely, and actually the hard sell isn't to sell it if you understand it. In fact, to clients that understand it, it's literally minutes for them to say it's a no-brainer. We need it. This is an absolute nightmare for us. It's taking insane amounts of time. It's actually creating frustration across the institution as well as our clients, i.e. their underlying clients. And then you meet others that, look at us and say, what exactly is this doing? And of course, the question from our side is, oh my God, do they really not understand what they're doing, considering they are actually leading roles in these institutions? But that's just how it is. And I'm sure every single one of us will be challenged by that. And the market is moving. The regulators are definitely not taking a lot of these breaches lightly. And in many cases, it's not because these particular institutions or individuals in these institutions, they're turning a blind eye. They actually don't get it. It's as simple as that. And that's no different from meeting a great lawyer to a good lawyer to a bad lawyer, or a good accountant to a bad accountant, and so on. That's just how this space is. And that is our challenge. Our challenge is to sell to those that get it and to those that absolutely have no idea. And that's wonderful, because we're facing these challenges all the time and every day. And that is something that we as a company have to work even harder at, making sure that the product, the technology, the software jumps out at pretty much everyone in the chain, and to make them get it, to actually make them get it and empower them to see what these type of softwares can actually do for them and their organization. So yes, of course we are.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to move over to Eva's question from KPMG now. And Tom, I'm going to throw this to you. Regarding sustainability versus use of leading edge tech, stability versus moving fast and innovating. In your experience, how willing have your customers been to consider the use of AI technologies? And were they ready to provide the right data quickly to architect the system?
Wow, there's a lot of questions in there. So in terms of
that's why I threw it at you.
Yeah, in terms of the use of AI technology, absolutely. But the way that we always advise people on this is, like, if the answer to the question is, if an answer to the question that contains the word probably is good enough, then AI and ML are your friend. And if the answer isn't, or probably in that answer isn't good enough, then you probably need to be looking elsewhere. As in, if you're dealing with exact systems that the regulator needs and you're dealing with trade volumes, you probably don't have a big data problem anyway, and you can't be sort of dealing with something that's approximately correct. So yes, people are willing to consider it, but for the right set of questions. In terms of giving people, or people giving us the data that we need to power the system, that actually hasn't been a problem, because in terms of trustworthiness, governance of their data, all that kind of stuff, we have to have that conversation long before they give us any data. And in terms of the data they give us specifically, it's their entire books and records. So other than the data controller obligations for their employees' data, there isn't really anything more sensitive they deal with.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Apologies for the halo that appeared in the corner in the middle of that answer. So,
well, look, it's such a good one that the halo came out. I like that. It's obviously divine intervention. Yeah. I'm going to try and get two more in very, very quickly. So, Liam, and I'm going to go with you first, and then come over to you, Philip. So, brief answers. We are racing through time. This one comes from Andrew Freeman. As tech companies, to Liam, as tech companies, implementing your solutions invariably leads to some attrition of headcount and teams performing various functions in traditional ways. How have you overcome the challenge of persuading potential clients, senior stakeholders concerned, rightly or wrongly, the adoption of your solution may make them unpopular leaders?
Yeah, so the reality actually, and I'll be very brief, but it's a very interesting question. The reality of the answer to that in Cassini world is that that's not actually very often the case. The problems or the value that Cassini adds is really addressing things that firms just haven't done before at all internally, partly because they haven't maybe had the kind of the coordinated information or data set to do it, and maybe it takes a tech investment they've just never made. So generally when we're selling Cassini, we're not sort of creating, removing operations people's jobs or anything like that. There's sometimes a bit of a conflict between, do we buy Cassini or do we build something in-house? You have that sort of, you're up against, the IT architects who just want to go off and build the fun solution and, want to get the budget for that instead. That's generally an easy argument to win because it's a cost argument. I have had this scenario in my previous company 2 or 3 times where we were sort of replacing in hedge funds processes where they had their own kind of internal models and reconciliation processes. And generally the kind of way I always thought about it and tried to persuade clients to think about it was, it's freeing up resource to do something more interesting and more valuable. It's not necessarily that we're freeing up resource so you can fire them. It's actually, you can be a popular leader by saying, we're going to bring this tool set in to do the boring, work no one really enjoys doing. How can we make better use of those people who know our organization, know our business, and add better value to the business? So that's really the sort of the perspective. I mean, obviously in some cases it might be fintech solutions which just replace a whole operations team, but that's not generally very common. I think that's much more of an outsourcing kind of scenario.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We are right on time, but Philip, I'm going to ask you this brief one because it's too good a question to ignore from John Owens. Congratulations all on creating successful businesses. From a sales and marketing standpoint, what activity do they believe was most successful in getting them from zero to where they felt viable? Love that question. Gosh,
it's a chicken and an egg scenario. I think sales get you sales. At the end of the day, you go up the ladder. When we first started selling, we were selling at a point in the corporate hierarchy, which was probably analogous to where we sat as individuals when we were sort of in industry. As we've been able to get our message over, I think we've been able to talk to more and more influential people within the corporate hierarchies. And that in and of itself allows you to do a couple of things. So as we've been able to sell to more senior stakeholders, those guys are also telling their mates, this is how it started anyway. They're telling their mates, well, what solution have you got for this? Or why aren't you using that? Because it's saving us X amount of time or X amount of something or other, or time to market, blah, blah, blah. And actually, the more senior you can have those discussions, even within big companies, so one department to another, which is doing relatively similar functions, I think that was massive about getting our brand started. Once that was sort of bubbling along at a good enough level, it's a massive investment in brand itself. Brand is everything, being recognized as being a solution for something. We want to become the verb for our industry. We want to be a Dyson or a, something like that. We want to be thought of in that way, so that when you're talking about data, you're talking about how you Solidatus to data, or some solidated data or something like that. Because that's when your brand recognition, then it's viral at that point. What the objective we've got to kind of got for ourselves is that right now we get hundreds of likes. Next year we want tens of thousands of likes. That's the sort of when things say, okay, that's a real voice in the industry talking about something. So we know we are in our vertical, but getting us to that point where people are really seeking opinion and that people are thinking about us first. So the first steps on that journey were making sales. You've been on this show now, so you can expect tens of thousands of likes. Yeah, that's why we're here. Moving it further forward. There we go. We've won together. Guys, that was an absolutely cracking hour, and I can't believe how quickly it's gone. I'm so grateful to all of you. I know how busy everyone is in this sort of phase of hypergrowth. So for you to spend the time just to sort of talk through those pearls of wisdom has been an absolute pleasure. I always say that I come off these shows just pumped up, and the team sort of dread me coming out, cracking the whip and getting overexcited about everything. It's going to absolutely be what happens again today. Thank you to everyone who's attended, listened. I hope you've got as much value from this as I have. We will be putting it out there on all our channels as well, and making sure that this lives on with various snippets and
recordings as it moves on later on as well. To Liam, to Philip, to Tom, and to Remonda, it's been a fascinating conversation. I'm so delighted that all of you have achieved so much over the course of last year. It's been great to see, and I wish you nothing but more success over the rest of this year and beyond as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching. Thanks so much for a great show.